Settling the World is a collection of short stories covering a period of 50 years, and it's titled from one of them. I chose the title for its ambivalence. Science fiction is often utopian in its impulse, and in the 70s I felt that this utopianism hid an essentially escapist impulse. And I wanted to write something ironic around that idea. So the story Settling the World sets up a tension between two possible interpretations of the phrase. And by the end of the story, the utopia is shaken, but still in place, and the world has been less settled than settled. It's perhaps the first of my attempts to make satirical and parodic commentary on science fiction itself, under the cover of writing immersive entertainment. Your writing is always part of your life, even when the product seems to have no superficial connection to it. Indeed, especially when the product seems to have no superficial connection to it. So it's a strange process to assemble and reread a lot of old stories. The first thing you discover is that while you think you remember them, you don't. The next is that while you think you've changed a lot in that time, you've changed less than you thought. With a few tweaks, the earliest story here, The Causeway, in which an unsavoury human explorer becomes frustrated and enraged by the behaviour of the inhabitants of a distant planet, could have been written yesterday. It deals with exactly the same issues of othering and migration as In Autotelia, a story I wrote in 2003, and it deals with it in the same way, by inviting the reader to make the moral judgment implicit in the story. I like to think that In Autotelia approaches the subject with a more calculated irony, a subtler understanding, but I enjoy the brute force sarcasm of the earlier version almost as much. Paradoxically, of course, you have changed in that time. The shortest piece in the book, I Did It, from 1997, a grotesque, flippant little horror story, which comes in at a hefty 1,300 words, is a major shift in technique, moving away from the lumbering, almost Edwardian structures of the earlier stories, not a moment too soon. Short stories are what you can clear out, not what you leave in. They're about implication, and they rely heavily on the participation of the reader. After I Did It, I felt confident that I could do that, and write with less anxiety as a result. Despite its delightfully retro sci-fi cover, there's quite a fair balance between science fiction, fantasy, and horror in this collection. I think, anyway, that all these kinds of stories come from the same place and can easily be seen as expressive subdivisions of imaginative fiction. My later stories don't even try to fit the categories. They mix and match, visiting, often parodically, everything from the weird to the ontological and psychogeographic, and of course, I've always been interested in what you might call landscape writing. In all cases, I try to put genre at the service of the imagination, the social imagination, the political imagination, my own imagination, rather than the other way around. These stories have to be read for themselves. I've always seen the author as the minotaur, encouraging the reader to navigate their own way through the maze to the story's intentions.